Sarah Martinez had always been different from other soldiers. While her fellow Marines shouted commands and boasted about their shooting skills, she preferred to work in silence. At 26, she had already served 3 tours overseas, but nobody really knew what she was capable of. She kept to herself, spending hours cleaning and maintaining her Barrett, .20 caliber rifle with the dedication of a craftsman, perfecting their art. The other soldiers at Forward Operating Base Courage often wondered why Sarah was so obsessed with her weapon. They would see her every morning before dawn, carefully disassembling the massive rifle, cleaning each component with precision that bordered on obsession. The Barrett 50 was not a typical sniper rifle. It was a beast of a weapon, designed to stop vehicles and penetrate armor rather than take precise shots at enemy personnel. Most soldiers found it too heavy and too powerful for regular use. Sarah's commanding officer, Captain Robert Hayes, had noticed her unusual dedication, but never questioned it. He knew that Sarah came from a family of hunters in rural Montana, where shooting was as natural as breathing. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was just 8 years old, starting with a .22 rifle and gradually working up to larger calibers. By the time she was 16, Sarah could hit a target at 800 meters with iron sights alone. The base was located in a mountainous region where visibility stretched for miles in every direction. Intelligence reports suggested that enemy snipers were operating from the distant ridgelines, picking off coalition forces during supply runs and patrol missions. Several attempts had been made to locate and eliminate these threats, but the enemy always seemed to disappear before ground forces could reach their positions. Sarah had been studying the terrain for weeks, using high-powered spotting scopes to map every possible firing position on the surrounding mountains. She had identified several locations where an enemy sniper might set up, calculating distances, wind patterns, and elevation changes. Her notebook was filled with detailed observations about weather conditions, temperature variations throughout the day, and how these factors might affect a long-range shot. Other soldiers thought Sarah was wasting her time. The distances involved were beyond what most people considered possible for accurate shooting. The farthest confirmed sniper kill in military history was around 2,400 meters, and that had required perfect conditions and an exceptional shooter. Sarah was talking about targets that were nearly twice that distance. Lieutenant Jennifer Walsh, the base's intelligence officer, often worked late into the night analyzing enemy movements and patterns. She had noticed that Sarah would sometimes join her in the communications center, quietly studying satellite imagery and reconnaissance photos. Sarah never offered opinions or suggestions, but Jennifer could tell that the quiet Marine was processing information in ways that others might not understand. The Barrett rifle that Sarah maintained so carefully was capable of incredible accuracy, but it required a shooter who understood its unique characteristics. The weapon fired a 50 BMG cartridge that could maintain its lethal effectiveness at distances that would render other rifles useless. However, the recoil was tremendous, and the sound of firing could be heard for miles. It was not a weapon for subtle operations. Sarah had modified her rifle with a high-quality scope and bipod system that would allow for stable shooting from various positions. She had also calculated the exact ammunition specifications needed for long-range work, selecting match-grade cartridges that would provide the most consistent performance. Every detail mattered when attempting shots at extreme distances. The base's other snipers respected Sarah's dedication, but doubted her capabilities. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, a veteran with multiple combat deployments, often joked that Sarah treated her rifle like a religious artifact. He had never seen her fire the weapon in combat, only during routine qualification exercises where her scores were good but not extraordinary. What he didn't know was that Sarah had been holding back, never showing her true capabilities during official training. Captain Hayes received disturbing intelligence reports indicating that enemy activity was increasing in the region. Several outposts had reported sniper attacks, and convoy routes were becoming increasingly dangerous. The enemy seemed to be operating from positions that were well beyond the range of conventional weapons, making them nearly impossible to engage effectively. Sarah approached Captain Hayes with a proposal that seemed almost impossible. She wanted permission to attempt counter-sniper operations at ranges that exceeded anything previously attempted by their unit. She explained that she had been studying the enemy's patterns and believed she could predict where they would position. themselves for future attacks. The conversation took place in Hayes's office late one evening. Sarah spread out detailed maps and charts showing her calculations for wind drift, bullet drop, and other factors that would affect an extremely long-range shot. She spoke quietly but with absolute confidence about her ability to engage targets at distances approaching 4,000 meters. Hayes listened carefully to Sarah's presentation. He knew that conventional military doctrine considered such distances beyond the practical range of even the most sophisticated sniper systems. However, he also knew that Sarah was not the type of person to make unrealistic claims. Her reputation for precision and attention to detail was well established within the unit. After considering the proposal for several minutes, Hayes made a decision that would change everything. He authorized Sarah to attempt the operation, with the understanding that success would require perfect conditions and extraordinary skill. Sarah accepted the responsibility with the same quiet confidence she displayed in everything she did. Over the following days, Sarah intensified her preparation routine. She studied weather forecasts, analyzed wind patterns at different elevations, and practiced her shooting positions until every movement became automatic. She knew that she would likely have only one opportunity to prove that her calculations were correct. The other members of the unit watched Sarah's preparations with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Some thought she was setting herself up for failure, while others admired her determination to attempt something that had never been done before. None of them realized that they were about to witness a demonstration of marksmanship that would become legendary within military circles. Sarah's quiet confidence never wavered, even as the day of the operation approached. She had spent months preparing for this moment, and she knew that her calculations were as precise as humanly possible. The Barrett rifle was ready, her ammunition was selected, and the conditions were finally aligning for what could become the longest confirmed kill shot in military history. The morning of the operation began before sunrise. Sarah woke at 0400 hours and immediately checked the weather conditions that would determine whether her mission could proceed. The meteorological data looked promising. Wind speeds were minimal, visibility was excellent, and the atmospheric pressure was stable. These were the conditions she had been waiting for during weeks of careful planning. Sarah began her pre-mission routine with the same methodical precision she applied to everything. She consumed a light breakfast, knowing that her body needed fuel but avoiding anything that might affect her focus or steadiness. She had learned long ago that even small changes in blood sugar could impact shooting performance at extreme ranges. Lieutenant Walsh joined Sarah in the communications center to review the latest intelligence reports. Enemy activity had been detected in the suspected sniper positions during the previous evening, and reconnaissance drones had identified movement patterns that matched Sarah's predictions. The targets were operating from a position approximately 4,080 meters from the planned shooting location. The distance was staggering. To put it in perspective, most people would need binoculars to clearly see a human figure at that range. The targets would appear as tiny specks, barely distinguishable from rocks or other terrain features. The margin for error was virtually non-existent, and external factors like wind, temperature, and atmospheric pressure could easily cause a miss by hundreds of meters. Sarah and her spotter, Corporal Danny Kim, loaded their equipment into a modified vehicle that would transport them to the designated firing position. The Barrett rifle, weighing over 30 pounds with its scope and bipod system, required careful handling during transport. Sarah had wrapped the weapon in protective materials to prevent any damage that might affect its precision. The journey to the firing position took nearly 2 hours through difficult terrain. Sarah remained silent during the trip, mentally reviewing her calculations and visualizing the shot sequence. She had practiced this scenario hundreds of times, but she knew that actual combat conditions would present challenges that no amount of training could fully simulate. The selected firing position was on a ridge that provided clear line of sight to the target area while offering concealment and protection from enemy observation. Sarah and Kim established their position carefully, ensuring that their equipment was stable and that they had multiple escape routes if the situation deteriorated. Kim set up his spotting scope while Sarah prepared the Barrett rifle. Every movement was deliberate and practiced. She adjusted the bipod legs to ensure perfect stability, checked the scope mounts, and verified that the rifle was properly zeroed. The weapon had been test-fired several days earlier to confirm its accuracy, but Sarah performed additional checks to ensure nothing had changed. The ammunition Sarah had selected was match-grade .50 BMG cartridges with specific ballistic characteristics suited for extreme long-range shooting. Each cartridge had been individually inspected and measured to ensure consistency. At distances approaching 4,000 meters, even tiny variations in cartridge specifications could result in significant point-of-impact changes. Through her scope, Sarah could barely make out the target area. The distance was so great that atmospheric conditions created a shimmering effect that made precise target identification extremely difficult. She would be relying heavily on Kim's observations through his higher-powered spotting scope to guide her aim. Kim began calling out wind conditions at various points between their position and the target area. Wind was perhaps the most critical factor affecting long-range accuracy. A bullet traveling 4,080 meters would be in flight for several seconds, providing multiple opportunities for wind to push it off course. Sarah had to calculate not just the current wind conditions, but predict how they might change during the bullet's flight time. The mathematical calculations required for such a shot were incredibly complex. Sarah had to account for bullet drop due to gravity, wind drift at multiple altitudes, the Coriolis effect caused by Earth's rotation, air density variations, and temperature differences along the bullet's path. She had spent hours working through these calculations, but ultimately, success would depend on her ability to make real-time adjustments based on observed conditions. As Sarah settled into her shooting position, she began controlling her breathing and heart rate. At extreme ranges, even the slight movement caused by a heartbeat could affect accuracy. She had trained herself to fire between heartbeats during the natural pause in her respiratory cycle when her body was most stable. Kim reported movement in the target area. Through his spotting scope, he could see figures moving between concealed positions on the distant ridge. The enemy snipers were preparing for their own operations, unaware that they were being observed from such an extraordinary distance. They likely considered themselves safe due to the extreme range involved. Sarah made final adjustments to her scope, compensating for the distance and environmental conditions. The scope's reticle system allowed her to hold for bullet drop and wind drift, but the calculations pushed the limits of what the equipment was designed to handle. She was essentially attempting to use the rifle and scope combination beyond its intended operational envelope. The target became visible through Sarah's scope as a tiny figure moving against the skyline. At 4,080 meters, the target appeared smaller than the scope's crosshairs, making precise aim point selection extremely difficult. Sarah would have to use her experience and instincts to determine the exact point of aim needed to compensate for all the variables affecting the shot. Kim continued providing wind readings and target updates. He could see that the enemy sniper was setting up his own weapon system, apparently preparing to engage coalition forces in the valley below. This added urgency to Sarah's mission, as innocent lives could be at risk if she failed to neutralize the threat. Sarah's finger found the trigger of the Barrett rifle. The weapon's trigger had been carefully adjusted to break cleanly at exactly the right pressure. Too light and the rifle might fire accidentally during positioning. Too heavy, and Sarah might disturb her aim while applying pressure to fire. The moment of truth was approaching. Sarah had spent months preparing for this shot, calculating every variable and practicing every aspect of the firing sequence. Now she faced the ultimate test of her skills, equipment, and preparation. The success or failure of her mission would be determined by factors measured in inches at a distance, where most people couldn't even see the target. Kim made final observations of wind conditions and target position. The atmospheric conditions were as favorable as they were likely to get. Sarah knew that this might be her only opportunity to attempt the shot under optimal circumstances. She began her final firing sequence, moving through the mental checklist she had developed over years of precision shooting. Everything now depended on Sarah's ability to execute a perfect shot under the most challenging conditions imaginable. The target was barely visible, the distance was unprecedented, and the margin for error was essentially zero. Sarah's world narrowed to the precise mechanics of taking the shot. Her breathing became controlled and rhythmic as she settled deeper into the rifle's stock. The Barrett's considerable weight helped stabilize her position, but at 4,080 meters, even the smallest movement would translate to massive deviation at the target. She had trained her body to become as steady as granite in these crucial moments. Through her scope, the target remained barely visible against the rocky backdrop of the distant ridge. The enemy sniper had positioned himself in what he believed was an impregnable location, far beyond the effective range of any opposing weapon system. His overconfidence would prove to be a fatal miscalculation. Kim's voice came through her earpiece in measured, quiet tones. Wind is holding steady at 3 to 5 miles per hour, left to right at our position. I'm seeing some thermal activity in the middle, distance that might affect your trajectory around the 2,000-meter mark. His observations were critical because the bullet would travel through multiple air masses with different characteristics during its long journey to the target. Sarah made micro-adjustments to her scope settings, compensating for the environmental factors that Kim was reporting. At this distance, the bullet would drop nearly 400 feet due to gravity alone. The complex ballistic calculations she had performed predicted that the projectile would follow a rainbow-like arc through the air before reaching its target. The enemy sniper moved into a more exposed position as he prepared his own weapon. Through Kim's higher-powered spotting scope, they could see him adjusting his rifle and scanning the valley below for potential targets. He appeared to be preparing to engage a coalition convoy that was scheduled to pass through the area within the hour. Sarah's calculations indicated that the bullet would take approximately 6 seconds to reach the target. During that time, the 50 caliber projectile would travel through varying wind conditions, temperature zones, and air density levels. Predicting exactly how these factors would affect the bullet's path required both scientific precision and intuitive understanding gained through years of experience. The mathematical complexity of the shot was staggering. Sarah had to account for the fact that the Earth would literally rotate during the bullet's flight time, causing the target to move slightly from its original position. This Coriolis effect became significant at extreme ranges and required careful compensation to ensure accuracy. Kim reported that atmospheric conditions were remaining stable. Mirage patterns looked consistent. No major thermal shifts visible. Target is stationary. Appears to be setting up for a shot of his own. The timing was critical because any delay might result in the enemy sniper completing his own mission against innocent personnel. Sarah's finger rested lightly on the trigger as she made final sight adjustments. The Barrett's trigger had been professionally tuned to break at exactly 3 pounds of pressure, with no overtravel. This ensured that the rifle would fire the instant she decided to take the shot, without any additional movement that might disturb her aim. The crosshairs of her scope settled on the tiny figure in the distance. At 4,080 meters, the target appeared as little more than a dark spot against the landscape. Sarah had to use her peripheral vision and pattern recognition skills to identify human features and predict where the target's center mass was located. Her breathing pattern shifted into the final phase of shot execution. Sarah took a deep breath, exhaled halfway, and held her lungs in the natural pause where her body was most stable. Her heart rate had slowed through conscious control, and she prepared to fire between heartbeats to minimize any movement caused by her pulse. Kim provided final confirmation. Target is stationary. Wind conditions unchanged, clear line of sight. These words were Sarah's signal that all factors were aligned for the attempt. She began applying pressure to the trigger with the same steady precision she had practiced thousands of times. The Barrett rifle discharged with a thunderous roar that echoed across the mountainous terrain. The massive muzzle brake redirected the explosive gases to reduce recoil, but the weapon still delivered a substantial kick that Sarah absorbed through her shooting position. The sound of the gunshot would be heard for miles in every direction, immediately alerting everyone in the area that a large caliber rifle had been fired. Sarah maintained her position behind the scope, fighting the natural impulse to immediately check the result of her shot. At this extreme distance, the bullet would take several seconds to reach its target, and lifting her head prematurely could prevent her from observing the impact and making necessary corrections if a follow-up shot was required. Kim kept his spotting scope trained on the target area, ready to call out the bullet's impact. The next few seconds would determine whether months of preparation and calculation had been successful, or whether Sarah would need to quickly adjust and attempt a second shot before the enemy could react to their presence. The bullet streaked through the air on its predetermined trajectory, following the precise path that Sarah had calculated. During its flight, the projectile encountered the various atmospheric conditions that she had predicted, with each factor contributing to its final point of impact. The 50 caliber round maintained its lethal energy throughout the journey, remaining capable of decisive effect even at this unprecedented distance. Sarah counted the seconds in her mind, knowing from her ballistic calculations approximately when the bullet should reach the target area. The mathematical precision of her preparation was about to be tested under the most demanding conditions possible. Success would validate not only her shooting ability, but also her understanding of the complex physics involved in extreme long-range marksmanship. Through her scope, Sarah watched for any indication that her shot had found its mark. At such distance, visual confirmation would be difficult to obtain immediately, and she would have to rely primarily on Kim's observations through his more powerful optical equipment. The moment stretched with agonizing tension as both shooters waited for confirmation of impact. Sarah's shot represented not just a test of marksmanship, but a culmination of months of study, preparation, and dedication to achieving something that had never been accomplished before at such range. Kim's voice would soon break the silence, with either confirmation of success or instructions for a rapid follow-up shot. The next few seconds would determine whether Sarah's quiet confidence and methodical preparation had been sufficient to achieve what many experts would have considered impossible. "Target down! Direct hit!" Kim's voice crackled through Sarah's earpiece with barely contained excitement. Through his spotting scope, he had witnessed the 50 caliber projectile strike its intended target with devastating precision. The enemy sniper had been eliminated instantly, his weapon rendered useless before he could threaten coalition forces in the valley below. Sarah maintained her position for several additional seconds, scanning the target area for any sign of additional enemy personnel. The thunderous report of her Barrett rifle had undoubtedly alerted anyone within miles of their location, and she needed to confirm that no other threats were present before considering the mission complete. Kim continued his observations, sweeping the distant ridgeline with his spotting scope. "I'm not seeing any other movement up there." Looks like he was operating alone. That shot was absolutely perfect. Sarah, dead center mass from over 4 kilometers away. The excitement in Kim's voice reflected the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. The mathematical precision of Sarah's shot was staggering to contemplate. At 4,080 meters, she had placed a 50 caliber projectile exactly where she intended, despite the numerous variables that could have caused it to miss by hundreds of meters. Wind drift, bullet drop, atmospheric pressure, temperature variations, and even the rotation of the Earth had all been calculated and compensated for with extraordinary accuracy. Sarah finally lifted her head from the scope and began the process of documenting the shot for official records. The range measurement would need to be verified using multiple methods to ensure accuracy. GPS coordinates were recorded for both the firing position and the target location, while laser rangefinders provided additional confirmation of the distance involved. Kim used his equipment to photograph the target area, capturing images that would serve as proof of the successful engagement. The documentation process was critical because Sarah's shot would likely represent a new world record for confirmed sniper kills, surpassing previous records by a significant margin. Captain Hayes had been monitoring radio communications from the base and immediately requested confirmation of the mission's outcome. Sarah's calm voice reported simply, "Mission accomplished. Target neutralized at 4,080 meters. No additional threats observed." Her matter-of-fact delivery understated the historic significance of what she had achieved. The implications of Sarah's successful shot extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Military snipers around the world had generally accepted that effective ranges were limited to approximately 2,500 meters under optimal conditions. Sarah had nearly doubled that distance while maintaining lethal accuracy, suggesting that current doctrine might need to be reconsidered. As news of the successful engagement spread through military channels, weapons experts and ballistic specialists began analyzing the technical aspects of the shot. The combination of Sarah's modified Barrett rifle, carefully selected ammunition, and precise environmental calculations had achieved something that many would have considered theoretically impossible. Sarah and Kim began their careful withdrawal from the firing position. The sound of the Barrett's discharge would have been heard throughout the region, potentially attracting enemy attention to their location. They needed to reach safety before hostile forces could organize a response to their presence. During the journey back to base, Kim peppered Sarah with questions about how she had prepared for such an extraordinary shot. He was amazed by the level of detail in her calculations and the months of preparation that had made success possible. Sarah answered his questions modestly, emphasizing that the achievement had been the result of teamwork and favorable conditions rather than individual brilliance. Back at Forward Operating Base Courage, word of Sarah's record-breaking shot spread quickly through the ranks. Soldiers who had previously viewed her as just another quiet Marine began to understand that they had been serving alongside someone with truly exceptional abilities. Her dedication to maintaining her weapon and studying ballistics suddenly made perfect sense to everyone. Lieutenant Walsh immediately began preparing the official report that would be sent up the chain of command. The documentation required would be extensive, as records of this magnitude needed to be thoroughly verified before receiving official recognition. Photographs, GPS coordinates, witness statements, and ballistic calculations would all be included in the comprehensive package. Captain Hayes called Sarah into his office for a detailed debriefing about the mission. He wanted to understand exactly how she had achieved such unprecedented accuracy at extreme range, both for operational purposes and to potentially share the techniques with other sniper teams. Sarah walked him through her preparation process, emphasizing the importance of environmental awareness and precise mathematical calculations. The tactical impact of Sarah's success was immediately apparent. Intelligence reports indicated that enemy sniper activity in the region had ceased entirely after word spread about the 4,080-meter kill. Opposition forces were apparently reluctant to operate in areas where they could be engaged at such extraordinary distances, providing increased security for coalition operations. Military historians began researching previous long-range shooting records to determine exactly where Sarah's achievement ranked in the annals of marksmanship. Preliminary research suggested that her 4,080-meter kill exceeded the previous record by more than 600 meters, representing a quantum leap in demonstrated sniper capabilities. Sarah's ammunition selection and rifle modifications became subjects of intense interest among military technicians. Her careful documentation of environmental factors and ballistic calculations provided valuable data for improving long-range shooting doctrine and training programs. The knowledge gained from her success would benefit sniper teams worldwide. The psychological impact on enemy forces was perhaps as significant as the tactical benefits. The knowledge that coalition snipers could engage targets at previously unimaginable distances created uncertainty and fear among opposing personnel. Areas that had been considered safe due to distance were now recognized as potentially vulnerable to precision fire. Sarah's achievement also highlighted the importance of individual initiative and dedication within military operations. Her months of self-directed study and preparation had created capabilities that exceeded official doctrine and expectations. Military leaders began considering how to better identify and develop soldiers with similar potential. As the initial excitement of the successful mission began to settle, Sarah returned to her normal routine of equipment maintenance and preparation. She understood that her record-breaking shot had been possible only through the combination of exceptional preparation, favorable conditions, and precise execution. Maintaining those standards would require continued dedication and attention to detail. The official confirmation process for Sarah's record would take several weeks as military authorities verified all aspects of the achievement. However, the immediate tactical and psychological benefits were already evident throughout the operational area, where coalition forces could operate with increased confidence and security. Within hours of Sarah's record-breaking shot, encrypted communications began flowing between military headquarters around the world. The 4,080-meter kill had captured the attention of senior officers, weapons specialists, and tactical analysts who understood the revolutionary implications of what had been achieved. Sarah's quiet competence had suddenly thrust her into the spotlight of military history. Colonel Patricia Williams, commanding officer of the Regional Sniper Training Facility, arrived at Forward Operating Base Courage within 48 hours to conduct a personal interview with Sarah. Williams was a legend in military circles, having established many of the current standards for long-range marksmanship training. Her presence at the remote base underscored the significance of Sarah's achievement. During the interview, Sarah displayed the same calm professionalism that had characterized her entire military career. She provided detailed explanations of her preparation methods, calculations, and equipment modifications without any trace of boastfulness or self-promotion. Colonel Williams was impressed not only by Sarah's technical knowledge but also by her mature understanding of the factors that had made success possible. The ballistics experts who analyzed Sarah's achievement were astounded by the precision of her environmental calculations. Wind speed and direction measurements at multiple altitudes, temperature variations throughout the bullet's flight path, and atmospheric pressure adjustments had all been factored into her firing solution with remarkable accuracy. Her methodology exceeded what was being taught at advanced military academies. Media attention began focusing on Sarah's record, though military security requirements limited what information could be publicly disclosed. News reports described the achievement in general terms, while protecting operational details that might compromise ongoing missions. Sarah found herself uncomfortable with the attention, preferring to focus on her duties rather than public recognition. Captain Hayes received orders to prepare a comprehensive training package based on Sarah's techniques and methods. Military leadership recognized that her approach to extreme long-range shooting could enhance capabilities across all sniper teams. Sarah was assigned to work with training specialists to develop curriculum materials that could be used at various military schools. The weapon modifications that Sarah had implemented became the subject of intensive study by military armorers and ballistics technicians. Her systematic approach to optimizing the Barrett rifle's accuracy had resulted in improvements that exceeded factory specifications. These modifications were quickly adopted as standard procedures for other precision shooting platforms. Sarah's ammunition selection process was particularly noteworthy to experts. Her method of testing and categorizing individual cartridges for consistency had resulted in ammunition that performed far better than standard military specifications. This attention to detail had been crucial for achieving accuracy at unprecedented distances. Military psychologists were fascinated by Sarah's mental approach to extreme long-range shooting. Her ability to remain calm under pressure, while processing complex mathematical calculations in real time, demonstrated exceptional psychological resilience. Studies were initiated to understand how similar mental capabilities could be identified and developed in other personnel. The enemy sniper that Sarah had eliminated was later identified through intelligence sources as a highly skilled marksman who had been responsible for numerous coalition casualties. His elimination had likely saved many lives and significantly reduced the threat level in the operational area. Sarah's mission had achieved strategic benefits far beyond its immediate tactical success. International military observers requested detailed briefings about Sarah's achievement and the techniques she had developed. Allied nations were interested in incorporating her methods into their own sniper training programs, recognizing that her innovations could enhance their operational capabilities as well. Sarah was recommended for multiple decorations recognizing both her individual achievement and its broader impact on military operations. The formal citation process would take several months, but preliminary approval had been granted for commendations at the highest levels. Her superiors emphasized that the awards recognized not just marksmanship, but also the innovative thinking that had made such precision possible. The psychological impact on coalition forces throughout the region was overwhelmingly positive. Soldiers who had previously felt vulnerable to enemy snipers now understood that their own capabilities had been dramatically enhanced. Morale improvements were reported across multiple units as news of Sarah's success spread through informal channels. Training facilities around the world began requesting Sarah's assistance in developing advanced marksmanship programs. Her practical experience with extreme long-range shooting provided insights that could not be gained through theoretical study alone. Military leaders recognized that her knowledge represented a valuable resource that should be shared widely. Sarah's logbook, containing months of environmental observations and ballistic calculations, became a reference document for ballistics researchers. The systematic data collection that had enabled her record-breaking shot provided scientists with unprecedented information about projectile behavior at extreme distances. Equipment manufacturers sought Sarah's input for developing next-generation precision shooting systems. Her hands-on experience with pushing existing technology beyond its intended limits provided valuable feedback for improving future designs. Several companies offered contracts for her expertise in product development. The academic world also took notice of Sarah's achievement. Universities with ballistics research programs invited her to speak about the practical applications of theoretical principles in real-world conditions. Her ability to translate complex mathematics into successful field operations impressed physicists and engineers who studied projectile dynamics. Sarah remained focused on her military duties despite the attention and opportunities that her record had created. She understood that maintaining her skills would require continued practice and study, regardless of external recognition. Her dedication to excellence had not changed despite her newfound fame within military circles. The official verification process for Sarah's record continued through multiple levels of military hierarchy. Each step required additional documentation and testimony from witnesses to ensure absolute accuracy in the historical record. Sarah cooperated fully with all requirements while maintaining her characteristic professional demeanor. Colonel Williams recommended that Sarah be assigned to the advanced marksmanship training facility where her techniques could be systematically studied and incorporated into official doctrine. This assignment would allow Sarah to share her knowledge with future generations of military snipers while continuing to develop her own capabilities. As weeks passed following her historic shot, Sarah began to understand that her achievement had changed not only her own career trajectory, but also the broader understanding of what was possible in precision shooting. Her quiet dedication to excellence had resulted in advances that would benefit military operations for years to come. 6 months after her record-breaking shot, Sarah found herself at the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center in California, where she had been assigned to develop and teach advanced long-range marksmanship techniques. The quiet Marine who had once worked in relative anonymity was now responsible for revolutionizing how military snipers approached extreme distance shooting. The training facility had constructed a new range, specifically designed to accommodate shots exceeding 3,000 meters. Sarah had worked closely with engineers and range designers to create an environment where students could safely practice the techniques she had pioneered. The facility incorporated advanced weather monitoring systems and ballistics measurement equipment that surpassed anything previously available for training purposes. Sarah's first class of students consisted of experienced snipers from various military branches and allied nations. These were already skilled marksmen who had been selected for advanced training, yet they approached Sarah's instruction with the reverence typically reserved for legendary figures. Her reputation had grown far beyond the original achievement, encompassing her systematic approach to solving complex ballistics problems. The curriculum Sarah developed was unlike anything previously taught in military schools. Rather than focusing solely on shooting techniques, her program emphasized scientific methodology, environmental analysis, and mathematical precision. Students learned to approach long-range shooting as a combination of physics, meteorology, and psychology rather than just marksmanship. During her first lecture, Sarah displayed the same quiet confidence that had characterized her throughout her career. She avoided dramatic presentations or exaggerated claims, instead focusing on the practical application of scientific principles to real-world shooting challenges. Her students quickly realized that they were learning from someone who had not only theorized about extreme long-range shooting, but had actually accomplished it under combat conditions. The ballistics calculations that Sarah taught were significantly more complex than standard military doctrine had previously required. Students learned to account for variables that had been considered negligible at shorter ranges, but became critical factors when attempting shots beyond 3,000 meters. Her systematic approach to data collection and analysis provided a framework for achieving consistency at unprecedented distances. Sarah's influence extended beyond the classroom as manufacturers sought her expertise in developing improved equipment. Her collaboration with optics companies resulted in new scope designs optimized for extreme-range shooting, while ammunition manufacturers refined their products based on her detailed feedback about performance characteristics at extended distances. The official recognition for Sarah's achievement came in the form of multiple decorations presented during a ceremony attended by senior military officials from around the world. The citations emphasized not only her individual marksmanship, but also her contributions to advancing military capabilities through innovative thinking and methodical preparation. Sarah accepted the honors with characteristic humility, crediting her success to teamwork and favorable conditions. Research institutions began studying the implications of Sarah's achievement for future military operations. Defense analysts recognized that the ability to engage targets at 4,000-meter distances could fundamentally change battlefield dynamics, potentially requiring new tactical doctrines and defensive measures. Sarah's success had opened possibilities that military theorists were still working to understand fully. International military competitions began incorporating events based on Sarah's techniques, with ranges extending far beyond traditional distances. These competitions served both as training exercises and as venues for testing new equipment and methods developed by various nations. Sarah occasionally served as a judge for these events, providing expert analysis of competitor performance. The psychological impact of Sarah's achievement continued to influence military operations worldwide. Enemy forces had become increasingly cautious about operating in areas where coalition snipers might be present, understanding that their previous assumptions about safe distances were no longer valid. This psychological advantage provided tactical benefits that extended far beyond individual engagements. Sarah's training program expanded to include instruction for forward observers and intelligence personnel, who needed to understand the capabilities and limitations of extreme long-range engagement. These support personnel played crucial roles in identifying targets and providing environmental data that enabled successful shots at unprecedented distances. The scientific community became increasingly interested in Sarah's methodology as researchers recognized applications beyond military use. Universities studying ballistics, atmospheric physics, and materials science found valuable data in her systematic approach to solving complex projectile dynamics problems. Several academic papers were published analyzing the theoretical aspects of her achievement. Sarah's personal life had changed dramatically since her record-breaking shot. Marriage proposals from admirers around the world, book deals from publishers, and movie offers from Hollywood studios all competed for her attention. She declined most opportunities that would interfere with her military duties, preferring to focus on training the next generation of precision marksmen. The Barrett rifle that Sarah had used for her historic shot was retired to the Marine Corps Museum, where it was displayed alongside detailed documentation of the achievement. Thousands of visitors came to see the weapon and learn about the mathematical precision and environmental awareness that had made such an extraordinary shot. Possible military historians placed Sarah's achievement in context with other significant advances in warfare technology and technique. Her 4,080-meter kill was compared to breakthrough moments in aviation, communications, and other fields where individual innovation had expanded the boundaries of what was considered possible. The consensus was that Sarah had fundamentally changed modern understanding of precision shooting capabilities. 3 years after her record-breaking shot, Sarah received an assignment to establish a new international training facility, where allied nations could send their most promising marksmen for advanced instruction. The facility would serve as a center of excellence for long-range shooting, incorporating the latest research and technology developments inspired by Sarah's innovations. The new facility included indoor classrooms equipped with advanced simulation systems, outdoor ranges extending beyond 4,000 meters, and research laboratories for testing equipment and ammunition. Sarah worked with architects and engineers to create an environment where students could safely practice extreme-range techniques while contributing to ongoing research into the limits of precision shooting. Sarah's approach to training emphasized patience, systematic thinking, and scientific methodology over traditional notions of natural shooting talent. Her students learned that success at extreme ranges required thorough preparation, precise calculation, and careful attention to environmental factors rather than intuitive marksmanship skills alone. The international training program attracted students from over 30 nations, creating a community of precision marksmen who shared techniques and innovations. Sarah fostered collaboration between students from different military traditions, recognizing that diverse perspectives could contribute to continued advancement in long-range shooting capabilities. As Sarah approached the end of her active military career, she reflected on how her quiet dedication to excellence had led to achievements she could never have imagined when she first began maintaining her Barrett rifle with such meticulous care. Her record-breaking shot had been the culmination of years of preparation, but it had also been the beginning of a new chapter in military history. The legacy Sarah created extended far beyond individual recognition or career advancement. Her systematic approach to extreme long-range shooting had established new standards for precision, preparation, and scientific thinking in military operations. Future generations of snipers would benefit from the techniques and principles she had pioneered. Sarah's story demonstrated that extraordinary achievements often resulted from quiet competence, rather than dramatic gestures. Her months of careful observation, mathematical calculation, and equipment preparation had enabled a moment of historic significance that changed military understanding of what was possible with precision shooting. The impact of Sarah's 4,080-meter kill would continue, influencing military operations, equipment development, and training programs for decades to come. Her achievement had proven that the limits of human capability were often defined more by imagination and preparation than by technological constraints, inspiring others to push beyond conventional boundaries in pursuit of excellence. As Sarah prepared for her next assignment, she maintained the same quiet confidence and attention to detail that had characterized her entire career. She understood that her record-breaking shot had been possible only through the combination of preparation, opportunity, and execution, and she remained committed to helping others achieve similar levels of precision and professionalism in their own military service.